Hi there, Luke here with episode 28 of our Eurotrip 2020 travel series. I cannot believe it, we are near the end, guys. So, if you have not been following along on our journey, our Eurotrip 2020 travel series focuses on a trip that we did in the summer of 2020 through the countries of France, Luxembourg, and portions of Portugal. If you watched our last video, you will know that we finished up on the island of Saão Miguel, which was our first island that we visited in the Azores. In this video, I'll be talking about our time on the island of Faial. So, we woke up the next morning in our hotel on Saão Miguel in the city of Monte de Guia, which is where the main airport is for the island of Saão Miguel, and we proceeded to the airport to board our plane for the island of Faial. We arrived in the town of Horta, which is the main city of the island of Faial, and it was around 9:30 in the morning, and we had been corresponding with a taxi driver that does these taxi tours around the island, and we kind of spontaneously arranged with him to go immediately on our taxi driving tour around the island. We basically decided to do taxi tours for some of the next couple experiences in the Azores because we discovered that public transport is virtually non-existent on the Azores Islands and that we didn't necessarily want to rent a car for every single island that we were going to. So we decided that we would rather do a taxi tour where we could combine elements of transportation, of getting places, as well as learning some valuable historical and cultural information about the places we were visiting. Our taxi driver was a great guy. He had actually lived in Canada for a time, so we really bonded about our experience living in the Toronto area. And he proceeded to take us to all of the different highlights of this beautiful island of Faial. The first stop was going to the western side of the island of Faial and visiting Capelinhos. Capelinhos was a massive volcanic eruption that occurred in the year 1957 and resulted in the town in the area being pretty much destroyed, unfortunately. This resulted in a large exodus of around 2,000 Azorean people that moved to other countries, mostly the United States and Canada, and is not the only contribution to large Azorean communities in cities like Toronto and Boston, but was one of the contributing factors to this Azorean community being developed in Canada and the United States. This volcanic eruption resulted in the newest landmass in Europe. So this landmass that you see in the distance from this area has only been in existence since around the late 1950s. So really new land when you think on a geological timescale. There's a nice lighthouse here as well that has an interpretive center and goes through the history of the volcanic eruption that happened on this island. We didn't have time to see it because it was a Sunday and it was closed on Sunday, but if we were to go again, we would without a doubt visit this interpretive center because this is such an interesting aspect of Azorean history. We continued on our tour to the Restaurante Homar, where we enjoyed some nice cheese and local sweet dessert wine. Our next stop was a pretty view at the Miradouro da Ribeira das Cabras. This was located at the northwestern junction of the island. After this, we proceeded east to the probably most beautiful area of the island, which is the Caldeira. The views at Caldeira were absolutely stunning, and we took quite a bit of time just to enjoy and appreciate the views, as well as walking a little bit of the crater rim. Afterwards, we headed south along the perimeter of the Miradouro de Nossa Senhora da Conceição. This offered really excellent views of the city of Horta, as well as some of the beautiful scenery and ocean that you can see from vantage points like this. Another great scenic viewpoint to explore on the island is the Monte de Guia. We loved it for its unique crescent shape. The next day was actually a little bit of a rainier day, so we decided to kind of take it easy and maybe do some more indoor attractions, including visiting the local whaling museum, where we learned a lot about the history and culture of the whaling industry that happened on the Azorean Islands, as well as the transition away from the whaling industry as this industry started to die and move to a focus of whale watching rather than whale hunting. So that was a really worthwhile visit just to learn a bit more about this industry. If you're interested in seeing more of like the bars, restaurants, things like that, we did stop at one place called Peter Cafe Sport, which is a spot that you can get a local famous gin do mar, which means gin of the sea. Our last day on Faial was also our 6th day on the Azores Islands, and the policy during these COVID times was that you would get a COVID test on arrival, and then if you were staying longer than a week, you would have to get a second COVID test on your 6th day on the islands, just to confirm with a second negative test result that you were in fact negative. So we proceeded to do that. It was really easy to find, and it was kind of nice that waiting in line, you got quite a scenic view around you. Where we got our test was also in an ideal location that we wanted to explore after we were done. So after we got that out of the way, we proceeded to some black sandy beach areas around this particular location, and we also proceeded to the city sign where you can pose for selfies if you're cheesy like us. We just couldn't resist. Our next stop was to the Marina of Horta, which features these painted murals from people from all over the world. Because of the big maritime history of this area, this is one of the major stops of the island and is one of the longest marinas on the Azores Islands. Afterwards, we headed across town and visited the pretty Igreja da Nossa Senhora das Angustias. And this was a really pretty church just to see the interior of. And it has these unique collections of family crests on the ceiling above the altar. All right, everyone, that is it for our experience on the island of Faial. We hope you enjoyed it and maybe saw an island that you had never experienced before. It's pretty cool to see how different the islands of the Azores are, don't you think? So you will see more of that as we continue on our trip to and around the Azores Islands. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe so you see more content like this. And stay tuned for our next video where we go to the island of Saão Miguel. See you then. Bye.